Hey guys! This week in reading, we're going to be working on comparing and contrasting the similarities and differences between two texts on the same subject. So I'm going to be reading two nonfiction books this week. Recently, we've been doing a lot of fictional stories, which are fiction fake made up. This week, we're going to be focusing on nonfiction real. And both of the books that I'm going to be reading deal with chameleons. One might be just about chameleons and the other might just mention it. So the first one I'm going to be reading is called Chameleons Are Cool, and this is going to teach us all about chameleons. It's by Martin Jenkins and illustrated by Sue Shields. Chameleons are lizards, and lizards are reptiles, like snakes, crocodiles, and tortoises. There are about 4,000 kinds of lizards altogether, including around 120 different chameleons. Just over half of all the types of chameleons come from Madagascar, a big island off the east coast of Africa. Most of the others live in the mainland of Africa. Chameleons are cool. Some lizards eat bananas. Chameleons don't. Some lizards walk upside down on the ceiling. Chameleons can't. There's even a lizard that glides from tree to tree. A chameleon certainly wouldn't do that. It says, Gecko's toes are as sticky as Velcro. The flying lizard glides on wing-like flaps of skin. Iguanas don't just eat bananas. They love all sorts of fruit. So it's giving you some things that chameleons can't do. But of all the different kinds of lizard, I still think chameleons are the best. Chameleons are cool. This is kind of like an opinion piece. Now he's going to tell us why chameleons are cool. It's not that they're all that big. The biggest is only about the size of a rather small cat. It's called Ocelot's chameleon, and it lives in Madagascar. Whatever their size, chameleons usually get sick and die if kept as pets. They're much better off left in the wild. They can be really, really small, though. The smallest one could balance happily on your little finger. It's called the dwarf Brooksia, and it lives in Madagascar, too. Oh my goodness, look at how big a chameleon can get. The size of a small cat, or it can get it so tiny that it can fit on your pinky finger. And I suppose you wouldn't exactly call many of them beautiful. Their skin is wrinkly and bumpy, and they've got big, bulgy eyes, while lots of them have the most ridiculous... What do you think they're going to have the most ridiculous of? Noses! I think it's their noses I like best. Oh my goodness, look at all these different chameleon noses. I like that one. Their mouths are pretty odd, too. They turn down at the corners, which is why chameleons always look grumpy. It is kind of a grumpy-looking chameleon. Actually, they don't just look grumpy. They are grumpy. So if two chameleons bump into each other, things can get pretty lively. There's lots of puffing and hissing, and sometimes there's a real fight. And that's when chameleons do what they're most famous for. They change color. Our caption says, a chameleon will fight only with the same kind of chameleon as itself. So it won't fight with a different type of chameleon. Lots of people think chameleons change color to match their surroundings. They don't. They change color when they're angry, or when they're too cold or too hot, or when they're sick. And there are some sorts of chameleons that hardly change color at all. As a rule, though, chameleons don't bump into one another all that often. I suppose it wouldn't be fair to call them lazy, but they certainly don't move any more than they have to. And when they do, it's almost always incredibly slowly. A chameleon's feet are shaped like pinchers for holding on to branches tightly. See their pinchers? Their feet are kind of shaped like pinchers. Sometimes they stop completely in mid-step, as if they've forgotten what they're supposed to be doing. But if you look closely, you'll see that they're actually carefully peering about. If you peer about, that means you're looking about. So when it stops in mid-motion, it might just be alert and looking for something. Now, peering about is something chameleons are rather good at. That's because their eyes can move separately from each other, unlike our eyes, which always move together. It says most of a chameleon's eye is covered in skin, like the rest of its body. This caption says there's a tiny peephole in the middle that the chameleon sees through. Do you see that? How it's covered mostly in skin? And then there's a little peephole. So while one eye is looking back over the chameleon's shoulder, the other is scanning the branches ahead. As soon as it spots something tasty, the chameleon fixes both eyes on its prey and begins to creep forwards, even more slowly than usual. Then it opens its mouth just a crack and thwop! Out shoots this amazingly long tongue with a sticky tip at the end, like a piece of well-chewed chewing gum. Let's read our caption. Chameleons feed on all sorts of creepy crawflies, or all sorts of creepy crawlies. The big ones also eat small birds, mice, and even other chameleons. Sure. Okay, grasshopper didn't see it coming. Then the tongue flies back, and there's lots of chomping and chewing, and perhaps a few bits of insect leg fluttering to the ground. And after that, the chameleon just sits there for an hour or two, doing nothing very much at all, looking quite exhausted and still grumpy after all that hard work. Here's our caption. It says, most lizards gulp their food down without chewing it, but chameleons grind everything up thoroughly. Look at that bug sticking out of his mouth. Yuck. And there you have it. How could you possibly resist a pocket-sized, bad-tempered, color-changing, swivel-eyed, snail-paced, long-tongued sharpshooter? If chameleons aren't cool, then I don't know what is. That was a great opinion piece. I learned a lot about how to write an opinion piece from reading this story. But think about what you learned about chameleons. Now we're going to read another story to compare to this one. This book is called Everything Changes, and it's written by Christine Moorcroft. Do you think this book is going to talk about chameleons too? Could that be one thing they both have in common? I wonder if we'll learn anything new about chameleons from this book that the other book didn't talk about. I wonder if we'll learn anything that's not about chameleons. Let's find out. Here's our table of contents. It says people change is on page 2, animals change 4, insects change 6, plants change 8, water changes 10, weather changes 12, earth changes 14, index is page 16. Here's our heading, people change. People change as they grow from a baby to an adult. They grow bigger. Their arms and legs grow much longer. Their hair grows and changes color. So here's the baby, age 6 months, age 4, age 12, age 30, age 70. Do you see how the people are changing over time? I like how they labeled each illustration to help us understand. Here's our next heading, animals change. A chameleon can change the color of its skin. It can change to match the colors around it. It changes color to hide from other animals. This is called camouflage. Can you see where the chameleon went? It's there. It's just blending in. I noticed something different about this book because in Chameleons Are Cool, it told us why chameleons change color. But in this story, it's giving us a different reason that chameleons change color. Man, I can't get over how you can barely see that chameleon there. Insects change. A dragonfly changes as it grows. A young dragonfly hatches from an egg. The young dragonfly is called a nymph. When it is 2 years old, the nymph starts to change. It squeezes out of its skin. It becomes an adult dragonfly. So here are the eggs. Look at our diagram with our labels. Eggs, nymph, skin, adult dragonfly. 2 years. It takes 2 years before it becomes an adult. That's a lot different than the butterflies we've been learning about. Here's our next heading, plants change. Poppies change as they grow. A poppy plant grows from a seed. Buds grow on the plant. The buds open out into flowers. Seeds grow in each flower. When the flower dies, a seed box is left. The seeds are scattered by the wind. Let's get this diagram. Poppy bud, poppy flower, poppy seed box left behind. I'm noticing that both of these books used text features, but some of the text features are different. This book used a lot of captions, whereas this book's using a lot of diagrams and labels and headings. Did the other one have headings? Water changes. Water is a liquid which can change. It changes when it is heated. It changes when it is frozen. Boiling. When water boils, it changes into a gas. The gas is called steam. Do not touch boiling kettles. Freezing. When water freezes, it changes into a solid. The solid is called ice. We're learning about how all kinds of things change. Weather changes is our next heading. The weather changes from day to day. Sometimes it is warm and sunny. Sometimes it is cold and wet. Earth changes. A volcano can change the surface of Earth. When it erupts, a volcano shoots out ash, rocks, and red-hot lava. Here's our label, volcano. Sometimes a volcano erupts under the sea. It grows so tall that the top comes out of the water. It forms a new island. Look, here's our island. So cool how the Earth can change that way. And here's our index. It tells you where you can find each word that's mentioned in the book. I noticed the only 2 words that are mentioned on 2 different pages are the word nymph, which you can find on page 6 and 7, and the word volcano, which is mentioned on page 14 and 15. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed reading these 2 stories. Think about what's the same about these books and what's different. What did you learn from each one? We're going to fill in a Venn diagram comparing and contrasting these 2 stories like we have been doing with our fictional books. This time we're going to be doing it with these nonfiction books. All right, I can't wait to see what you write. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.